Buy, sell or rent out your property with Century 21 and you could win a 2-bedroom apartment on the Sunshine Coast worth over $400,000. Visit c21win.com.au to find out how.
Hello and welcome to Your Property Empire. I'm Chris Gray. On tonight's show, is negative gearing that important for the health of the property market, and does it make much difference if we do or don't have it? Now, new data shows an influx of construction over the next 24 months and predicted highs in unit settlements. So how is this situation going to change the Australian property market? And if you choose to buy into these new off-the-plan developments, what are some of the potential risks that you should be wary of? But first, recent CoreLogic surveys show that the majority of surveyed Australians believe foreign buyers are placing upward pressure on the market. So how much truth lies in these beliefs? Well, joining me tonight to give his opinions is Charles Tarbey, Chairman and owner of Century 21 Australasia. Good to see you, Charles. We've got you for the whole show. How lucky are we?
Yes, because everybody is away. It's the only reason.
Tom's off on stage up in Queensland.
He is doing a great job, no doubt.
So, foreign buyers. Obviously, we've had a lot of stuff in the papers, but a lot of people don't know if the data's actually there or if it's just kind of hype.
Well, it's been something that has been raised a lot more of recent times, particularly it started with the recall of a gentleman's property from Asia who spent a significant amount of money, and the government forced Joe Hockey forcing him to sell that. That was a big thing, and a lot of people have been talking about it for a long time because realistically there was no serious register that one could look at. But it's a double-edged sword, and this is my greatest concern with all of this. If you don't have the ongoing movement of construction, then there's a loss of jobs, and the property industry itself employs so many people. In fact, recent research would show that 1 in 4 people are affected directly or indirectly by the property industry. Now imagine if all of those apartments weren't being bought, then the construction wouldn't be there. And if the construction wouldn't be there, the jobs wouldn't be there. So it's really, really hard act to balance.
And I actually think, because we've talked about the New Zealand first homeowners grants and the foreign laws as well, I reckon we've got pretty good rules. And basically the rule is if you're a foreigner, you've got to buy brand new. Because they don't want foreigners buying second-hand properties, which is the local market. And I would have thought the average first home buyer, the average Australian, is buying second-hand property.
Well, the average first home buyer probably can't afford the apartments that have been sold. Anyway. You're in that industry, you know it better than anybody. You're not really going to find too many first home buyer property prices in off-the-plan sales, unless you're prepared to move substantially west or north or south in some cases in capital cities.
So I think it's a great rule, is if the foreigners want to buy here, buy the stuff that we don't want to buy.
Don't move too far west in Perth, you end up in the water. So, but that's true, and that's the thing. The biggest issue is if 50% of off-the-plan sales have to be sold to foreign investors as a maximum, I think that's the part that they should have questioned. Was it really 50%? Was it more? Did it push the prices? I have no doubt that the prices were impacted by the demand on property, and the demand came from overseas. But again, it's that double-edged sword. Do we have that situation where jobs are at risk because the property industry employs so many people?
Because you've got real estate agencies all around Australia. Do you think that brand new properties or foreign buyers is affecting the typical deal that your guys are doing?
Not the typical, no. And again, if you look at first home buyers, very rarely are they going to be in that price range, and that's the thing we have to be aware of. However, Chris, it does still help push the prices up. I mean, if you're still buying lots of buyers at this level, then the pricing here is going to climb with it. So it does impact on first home buyers because they're going to have to pay more, but they're probably not going to be the ones that will buy those off-the-plan sales. That's really the point there.
Yep. Now, also over the last few weeks, I've been hearing more and more different people from some of the agents saying, like in the Chatswood area, some of the Asian areas, saying that the banks are tightening lending for foreigners. Do you think that's true?
Well, I think that's been in place for a while. It's probably been a bit lax because, you know, the industry, we've all been in a bit of a boom and everybody gets a bit excited and things get approved and things get pushed through. I'd say that a lot of banks now should be concerned about that. They should be watching it very carefully because it'll impact on banks quite significantly. If you get a crash in China, as an example, and the people that have bought properties here in Australia can't complete on those properties, it's going to have an impact. It is definitely going to have an impact. And I think that's probably what they've become more aware of lately. Somebody said to me the other day, oh, look, is it true, you know, should we sell? Is there a crash coming? And so there's one thing that stops me from thinking about this crash all the time, and that's the interest rates. They're lower than I expected them to be. And I think that if interest rates rise significantly, quickly and significantly, yes, we're in trouble. But I think at this point in time, that's very highly unlikely.
And I've always said in the first few pages of all my books is the government and the banks have got a vested interest to make sure that property is stable. So even though it has happened in the US and some parts of the UK, they've got every single incentive to hold it up, whereas they haven't got that with the stock market or particular companies.
That's correct. And when you look at some of the markets that did crash from around the world, and a lot of them were discretionary spending. If you look at Spain, for example, there was a lot of holiday stuff sold there. And the first thing a person is going to dump if they have to is not going to be their family home. And that's my greatest concern. If something happens in China, it has to be dramatic, but it can happen, and if it does, they're going to dump the discretionary spending first.
And again, I was in Hong Kong about 2 weeks ago, and it's up and down like a yo-yo every time I'm going there, it's either up or down 10%, and it's because it's all speculative people investing in there, and then the government's trying to control it.
Have a look at what happened in Dubai, if you go back a few years ago, and there was this excitement about buying off the plan in Dubai, and that really damaged a lot of people. There was a significant number of people that couldn't complete, and the prices did change there. But again, Dubai has become more of an area where people are staying to live in, but you had a very high level of investment in there to start with, and it was almost like the Gold Coast in many respects.
Now, negative gearing debates come up yet again. I thought we'd all done and dusted, but it's come up again with their party. You've been doing a lot of press in the media talking about the pros and cons. What are your current thoughts?
Well, look, we're not interested in the politics of it. It's realistically, if the market, let's just assume for a moment that Labor win and it's introduced and the market is flooded with stock. Do you really think that's going to be a problem for real estate agents? If we've got more stock and the prices are cheaper, we're going to make more sales. So it's not about the politics at all, because either way, you know, we're going to do good business. The reality is it was brought in for a very short period of time in the early 80s. It had, from all reports, it had absolutely no impact on the price of property in the true sense that people were concerned about. They're saying, oh, the prices might drop, and they can, but not to impact so much on the first home buyer. It's not about the first home buyer. I think the reality of it, as I mentioned earlier on, is that the property industry employs a significant number of people, and you're putting yourself in a position there where you could cause a lot more damage. And as I said to you the first time we spoke about it, I'm more concerned about the impact around the property industry and what can happen. There's a site that's been put up by the industry, a website that people can go and visit. It was put up by the institutes and a number of the leading chains and independent real estate companies around Australia, and it's negativegearingaffectsyou.com. It's pretty straightforward, and people can go to negativegearing.com, negativegearingaffectsyou.com, and they can have a look and they can make a comment. And there's plenty of comments from people. There's positive, there's negative, there's what you'd expect. Our greatest concern is that it is a significant part of the economy, the property industry. What could it do? And that's the biggest fear from everybody. It's an unknown factor.
And look, certainly it's not going to be the end of the debate, so we'll certainly be talking about it over the next few weeks as the election continues. But yeah, for a lot of people in the industry, look, some are panicking and others are just taking it on the chin. Anyway, now it's time for Purchase or Pass. Now, with so many people thinking that property is getting too expensive for everyone to afford, in our Purchase or Pass segment this week, I thought we'd go and see what 500 grand can still get you if you still want to go for a blue-chip suburb close to the city. And to make it as hard as possible, I thought I'd choose our most famous beach, and that, of course, is Bondi Beach. So we've got a studio unit with lock-up garage, 6.5 kilometres from the CBD and just 1.3 kilometres to the sand. It's located on the first floor of a small security block of 15, and it's halfway in between the shops and transport hub of Bondi Junction and the lifestyle and leisure of Bondi Beach. Now, the property is currently in good condition, but judging from some of the photos that will come up, it could do with an upgrade. Now, the property sold just 2 months ago for $435,000, and the expected rent is around $400 a week. And I think we've got the size in there at 31 square metres. Now, of all properties, so I did a search on realestate.com this morning. I came up with this idea, and you never guess which real estate agent had the only property that sold for under 500 grand this year?
Does that mean we're not...
Century 21.
Oh, isn't that lovely? So we're not a... OK, that's fantastic.
Now, you can read a lot of things into that.
Say, I almost said a few things. I'll leave it at that. 31 square metres.
But look, I mean, look at the pictures.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
you're okay to the beach.
$400 a week. I mean, let's just assume for a moment you borrow the entire $435,000.
A beautiful bathroom as well.
How often can you find a property where your rental return is not much lower than the repayments in a suburb like Bondi? It's almost a steal. I mean, the only thing that concerns me about it, you might even buy it just for the car parking space because that's pretty hard to get. The only thing that concerns me is 31 square metres is below what the value of where most banks will look at. So it has to be specialised lending. So you might end up having to pay a little bit more in interest to get it. But, gee, 31 square metres, Bondi Beach, one car park, $400 a week rent, $435. That's a pretty good price.
And look, I mean, we'll start on the negatives because it's by no means perfect. So look, from those photos, it's on the main road.
Sure. Yeah.
And there was traffic lights there.
Yeah.
And so traffic lights, I mean, Bondi Road is buses, cabs, the whole lot.
Everything.
All the hoons on the Friday and Saturday night.
Okay.
Traffic lights is a nightmare because obviously people are stopping and starting, and it's small, so there's limited funding. So look, it isn't perfect.
It isn't. All the hoons driving Lamborghinis too. Yeah. So.
But for $435,000, what do you expect? You're paying for what you get, aren't you?
If you were a politician, for example, and you had a living away from home allowance... Oh, this is a hot subject, isn't it? I should leave that one alone. Let's just put it another way. If you're a businessman and you're travelling to that area a lot, it would cost you more in hotels. So you could probably get it spruced up a little bit and you could have an investment property.
Well, that was the other positive, because obviously looking at those pictures, it's certainly not perfect, so you can, anything you did to it would be an improvement on it.
Yeah.
And again, is double glazing these days, it's pretty good stuff. You spend some good money on that and you probably won't hear the traffic.
I'm sure it's quiet at some time, at certain points, but that says...
on a Sunday afternoon or something like that.
That's a pretty good one. I would be a purchaser at that price, given that I know it's incredibly hard to find...
Look, probably the debate I'll quickly give you is, if you had a chance in this time of the market, your only other chance at $435,000 is probably to go to regional New South Wales or Queensland or something like that.
Not much around. Not much around.
If you're, say, like me, and you've got no idea because you haven't been outside of the city walls, would you take a punt on going somewhere regional, which may be a 50-50 punt? Or would you go for something, say, in the city that's not perfect, but...
I would go with something like this, and I must say, and I no disrespect to you, Chris, but I've heard that you think the Western Suburbs starts at Centennial Park.
Well, I thought it was Pyrmont,
it's a little bit further out than that, a little bit further out.
Mount Street Coogee at times.
I did pull up Angus Rain on that one day. Hello, Angus, I hope you're watching.
So purchase or pass for you on this one?
That. Yeah, I'd purchase for sure.
Yeah. But look, I don't think this is the best unit in the world, but you get what you pay for. So as an armchair investor for myself, I'd much rather a small unit in the heart of one of the best suburbs in the country than to play the roulette wheel and take a punt on something bigger in the middle of nowhere where I probably don't have any local knowledge. But look, if you're a local, then I can see the argument for that. So look, I'm going to go for a purchase as well. Anyway, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back in a minute.
Have you ever looked for a hotel online? Well, Trivago does the work for you and instantly compares the prices of over 600,000 hotels from over 200 different websites. That's how you can be sure that you find the ideal hotel for the best price. Hotel Trivago.
The new Kia Cerato comes with Australia's only 7-year warranty and a stunning new design inside and out across the range. It starts with the Cerato S from just $19,990 drive away with free auto.
Every young Australian needs a good start.
It's my first job and, yeah, I love it.
I wake up with a smile each morning.
Mum was really happy when I got the job.
Over the moon.
To be a role model for my children.
Hopefully one day I can be a store manager.
I was like, my first paycheck.
I'll try hard for them because they gave me the opportunity. Every day.
Another Australian.
It's a great start at Woolworths.
I love working there.
Oh, man. Yes.
Teaching people to do something I love, I like that idea. It became my flight school. I wouldn't be flying if it wasn't for my granddad. He flew Kitty Hawks in the Pacific. He had some stories. I got to take him up once. I expected him to be nervous. He looked around and said, "I like your office."
Small business, we see you. NAB.
All right, holiday time. Let's start with flights.
Hotels.
Oh, what next? I forgot you can't ski.
Feel it, Riva. Oh, I feel it. Enough. Whoa!
Perfect.
Choose the holiday that's right for you at whatif.com, the home of holidays.
In our fast-paced world, it's easy to miss anything unusual. But with the ongoing threat of terrorism, we all need to play our part by reporting anything suspicious. Even if you think it's probably nothing, the smallest piece of information can be valuable. Calls to the National Security Hotline have already contributed to investigations. If something doesn't add up, speak up by calling the National Security Hotline on 1800 123 400 and help keep Australia safe from terrorism. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
Getting the Pollies to agree to this week's Paul Murray Live has been no mean feat, but we're going to South Australia. Will those billions of dollars to build submarines save the Liberal Party, or is Nick Xenophon about to wipe the table? We'll find out by going to the seat of Hindmarsh. It's a place the Libs desperately want to hold on to, but Xenophon thinks he's a massive chance. What's going to happen? We'll get marginal seat MPs, we'll get questions from normal people, and hopefully make some news. So join us for the best roadshow in the business, Paul Murray Live on Sky News Live.
Welcome back to the show. Now, recent CoreLogic data shows an influx of construction over the next 24 months, and they're predicting historic highs in unit settlements. So how is this situation going to change the Australian property market?
Well, I hope they're right. And what I mean by that is I hope they're right about the settlements occurring, because if there's a significant number coming on, one of the greatest fears that we have is that valuations and actual contract price don't meet. Luckily, a lot of people bought off the plan maybe a year ago or even 2 years ago, and they're just coming out of the ground now in some cases. So they will have done really, really well. But you know what it's like when people get into a frenzy in buying, and then they're buying at the top end of the cycle, which we're pretty close to being at, subject to interest rates changing. And so if they bought in the last 6 months, did they buy at the top of the cycle? Will it in 12 months or 24 months still be there, or will there have been a correction? And that's the thing that you've got to watch for.
Because my biggest worry is the people that got approved, say, pre-September, which was roughly when the APRA changes came in, didn't they? And so they were getting assessed basically on interest only at maybe 4 or 5%, and now they might be getting assessed at P&I at 7 or 8%. So that can kill a lot of those buyers. It
absolutely can, and one of the fears I have with regards to that, and this is something that I hope that somebody can explain, if we have the negative gearing policies removed, the current legislation changed, what will happen if somebody is buying a property off the plan and they can't complete? So they've effectively exchanged contracts, or contracts become unconditional. So it's now no longer a new property. So does that mean that half a block is going to have negative gearing potential and the other half is not? Meaning that the other half of the block where people don't complete, they're going to be very heavily disadvantaged in that.
Because I think isn't it as if someone's actually moved in? So say if someone can't settle, if no one's actually moved in, is that technically brand new still?
It's been purchased. It's whoever buys it next has to pay stamp duty again. They don't get it transferred to them. There's another lump of stamp duty. So
I'm sure the government will be able to double dip on that one.
I'm sure they'd be happy to take it. To me, it's an established property. The moment it becomes unconditional, that's it.
Now, in the good old days, you'd buy the off-the-plan property for 500, it'd be worth 600 by the time you settle, and you put almost no money down and you get it. What are some of the risks with off-the-plan these days? What is the reality?
It is that. It is the fact that you could be focused on the capital gain you're going to get. And so you might go, instead of buying one property off the plan, you'll take the risk, I'll buy two because I don't have to put down a lot of money. And you run the risk of it having an impact on you from that point of view if there's a reduction in terms of pricing. I think buying off the plan is fantastic. It's a great opportunity, a great way of doing it. You just have to be selective about where you buy. Just buying off the plan doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do well. You can buy in an area where there's an incredible oversupply. There's a lot of properties that haven't even started construction today, Chris. that are approved and they're ready to go. They might be waiting on some sales to come through before they start. There's a lot of stuff sitting idle that hasn't even started construction yet. We're giving away a 2-bedroom apartment on the Sunshine Coast to a lucky buyer, seller, landlord or an established client of Century 21. And that competition starts shortly when our licensing comes through with the next couple of weeks.
Competition as a host
actually,
of
you
Sky?
probably can, but you can, but nobody working in my company can. and we're buying that off the plan. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us because we can put down the deposit, hold it today, and in 12 months' time, we don't have to worry about paying it until then. So there's those great opportunities from that point of view. It's just have to be really careful about where you're buying right now. And you have to be careful of how many sites are still about to come out of the ground. That could cause you some grief.
Because, again, going back to that original thing, the thought is you pay today's price, but you settle tomorrow still at today's price. But the reality is, for a lot of people, they're already paying tomorrow's price today, and it's then cross your fingers if it's still worth the money in 12 months' time.
That's the concern, because some of the sites that have come out of or started to come out of the ground, they've been priced very, very high because the market was moving that way. So I'm not sure. I think there could be a few people who could get caught. I think there'll be a few people that'll make a lot of money as well. It's very much a timing thing, but there is a heavy focus on it right now, and this is why I'm concerned about the negative gearing aspect. I'm just concerned about touching the property industry because it employs so many people. I just think it's dangerous. I don't know what can go wrong. I don't know what the end result of it is going to be. There could be a whole series of things. I just would prefer if it was just left alone for now.
Yeah. OK, well, I've got plenty of other questions to ask you, but we better jump into your numbers to make sure we get those.
All right.
Let's start off with your auction clearance rates.
Yeah, the clearance rates were 70% nationally, right on 70% nationally. This time last year, it's always good to reference back, was 79.1. And what I noticed between the capital cities is that there's a drop. Although Sydney performed well this week at 74.2%, Melbourne at 70.7%, and Adelaide at 70.1%, the reality is that all of them are about 10 points behind what they were this time last year. So there's definitely a change. The only improved capital city from this time last year was Brisbane.
OK. And what about homes advertised for sale?
They're negative. Interestingly, we've got this massive difference between Australia and New Zealand at the moment. They're down 1.94%. We expected them to drop, but then they jumped again a couple of weeks ago. But New Zealand had a bit of a quiet time, and all of a sudden they've jumped 12.4% in the amount of stock this week over last week, and most of it in Auckland where it was needed, because that market is still very, very strong. So that's a good thing for them because they've got the demand to meet it.
Now, with the election coming up, does that just put the majority of people just on hold straight away? Let's sit on the fence, let's not do anything?
Yeah, the best one to watch is Canberra. Canberra is always the guide to tell you how people are feeling, and right now that marketplace has changed. Its clearance rates are always up the top there, and they've dropped back quite significantly, so there's a lot of people just a bit cautious there, and they're always my good indicator as to what
because would some people jump to get in before the election, or is it easier just to not make a decision, see what happens, and then decide whether you put it on the market?
The difference between the two governments, without naming them, is that one of them, when they're in power, when one's in power and the other's not, there's more people who own homes in Canberra. And then when another party comes in, they go through cost-cutting and changes, there are fewer homeowners in Canberra. So it's really about what cost-cutting is going to occur if you think about it, all the promises that are being made by the various politicians at the moment.
OK. Well,
I'm trying to be
you're very diplomatic.
You should be neutral.
You could be a politician almost,
I could
Charles.
not be a politician, but anyway, I've got my background would prohibit me.
What about rent price movements?
Yeah, not too bad at all. They haven't gone up. They've gone down for the first time, but not crazy. So we had a negative 1.43% from this week over last week, which seems like a significant jump. But we've always been a little bit higher than the bar. We're actually at negative 0.48%. From the start of the year. That's the first time that we've really become negative from the start of the year. So the rents, I'm going to watch this trend now. If they're on a trending downwards, I don't think they are. It might be just a minor adjustment, but they're not going up.
OK, and finally the vacancy rates.
Melbourne killed Sydney this week, 2.26% vacancy rate for Melbourne, 2.72 for Sydney and 7.5 for Perth, always up there, 4.16% average between those three capital cities. Got your calculator?
Now, very quickly, a question I want to ask you. I was in New Zealand a few weeks ago. One of my wife's friends said, in New Zealand there's a Kiwi Saver account, and I think you can use your super as your deposit for the first home buyer to get into your home. Good idea or not?
It scares me because I think super is about what you have at the end of it for retirement, and if you spend it all now and you make the mistakes now, you're going to become dependent on government.
Yeah.
And the taxpayer.
So, yeah, I think it's a good 50-50 thing. So I agree with that as well. Because a lot of people do pretty stupid things.
Okay.
All right, Charles Tarbey, Century 21, good to see you.
Chris.
Thanks for joining us at home. We'll be back next week. Until then, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.
The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.